Hi, and welcome to Crash Course Cryptozoology. First off, I would like to voice my apologies for not uploading in nearly 5 months now. I've been working out new living arrangements and really been sorting out my thoughts on what kind of video I want to do going forward, and I think I found the perfect video. I think this will help encapsulate my thoughts, and I think thoughts that are very important to recognize on the field of cryptozoology in general, broadly speaking. There is a big contention right now in and out of the cryptozoological field with skepticism. And I think that part of this is because people who are skeptics are many times unwilling to take a real look at cryptozoology under a scientific lens. At the same time, though, there are people who think that being skeptical is just that, not appreciating cryptozoology. It's this, it's that, it's not scientific, it's just being a hater, ultimately. And I think that that really underserves the purpose of skepticism. It's good to be a skeptic, and I want to explain why. First off, I would like to voice that I do understand that there are people who look at cryptozoology as nothing but a joke. And in order to explain that and why I believe that's incorrect, I would like to direct you all to a friend of mine, Alien Nate, who has a channel of his own that I will link in the description. I will also link his newest video, Why Cryptozoology is Not Pseudoscience. Or, to quote the title, Cryptozoology is not equal to pseudoscience. With that being said, I would like to let his video explain that more. I just wanted to get that out of the way. And now, I'd really like to explain why it's healthy to be skeptical. First, let's start off with the definition of skepticism. Skepticism, broadly speaking, is a doubt as to the truth of something, a given subject. And there's a lot in cryptozoology that really should be doubted. So really, you should be skeptical about everything that you come across, ultimately, because being skeptical about everything you come across is how you find what things mean, what things represent, what's really being said by somebody, etc. What I think people don't understand sometimes is skepticism is so important regardless of what you want that truth to be, or what you at least hope that truth to be. To explain this better, allow me to introduce to you a very special anecdote. Back in the early 2000s, Rick Dyer and a friend of his came forward claiming that they had found a Sasquatch corpse out in the woods of, I believe, Georgia. This didn't get a whole lot of attention until Tom Biscardi, who is famous for his Searching for Bigfoot Inc. group, who have conducted expeditions in the past, decided they were going to take up the case. Tom Biscardi, being the spokesman, really pushed for this corpse being real. He held a press conference even, in which he stated not only had he observed the body firsthand himself, not only had he seen photographs, and not only was he going to pass out these photographs, he was going to bring out the people who had found the body, let them do a press conference, he had interviewed them himself, and last but not least, he had acquired DNA samples from this corpse. One of the samples came from the intestines of the alleged animal. When asked what the results of the DNA tests were, Tom Biscardi said,
Bottom line is, one of them came back that it was messed up, inconclusive. Out of the three, one came back as human, and the other one came back that because where they took the sample, which was from the intestines, okay, came back possum. So that could have been possibly what this thing had eaten. So we don't know.
That they came back as samples of possum DNA. He then claimed that that proved that the animal had been eating possums. Now, you sit down and you tell me what's wrong with that, because I guarantee you it won't take much time to tell me what's wrong with that. What's wrong with that is, it is the rejection of the idea that you should be looking for things that disprove your hypothesis. Rather, Tom Biscardi searched for things that would prove his hypothesis, regardless of the fact that anything else disproved it. Tom Biscardi may or may not have realized that this corpse did not belong to a Sasquatch, which it did not, but he desperately wanted it to. And so instead of realizing that these were likely possum samples found in this quote-unquote corpse, he suggested rather that this proved what the animal had been eating. Lo and behold, it turns out to be a hoax. This is not the first example of Tom Biscardi doing this with a piece of evidence. His famous hand of unknown origin has long been since proved to belong to a bear, albeit a bit strange looking as it's decomposed. However, despite this, Tom has always persisted, and I believe still continues to persist, that this belongs to a Sasquatch. But Tom Biscardi is not the only example. The late Robert Rines, who I did a video on prior, or at least a video on some of his evidence, had many alleged photographs of quote-unquote Loch Ness monsters that turned out to be nothing but rocks at the bottom of a lake, or bottom of the lake itself, the lake bed at a certain angle in the light that looked a bit odd. But he wanted it to be the Loch Ness monster, and so in his eyes, it was. Now, I can explain until the sun goes down why this is a bad attitude to have for public reputation. Tom Biscardi hasn't really made headlines since the Bigfoot Rick Dyer incident. But the reputation of the individual is not exactly what I'm trying to get at here. It's good to be skeptical and to not be this, which is the opposite of skeptical, because if you're not properly scrutinizing what you're looking at, you're not just delegitimizing yourself. You begin to delegitimize your field. And that is what cryptozoology is a major victim of. People who do not scrutinize evidence, or at least alleged evidence, properly, come up empty and pretend like they have something, instead of looking for actual results. And it's not like actual results aren't out there. I've discussed many videos on pieces of evidence that are hard to explain. Anecdotal, eyewitness, even physical evidence, even some that can be tested by DNA testing, that is difficult to explain. But because of the fact that that is in a minority of evidence, and instead the rest of the quote-unquote evidence seems to be, at least widely, considered false, even though people tend to act like it's not. The problem isn't necessarily that it's false. Of course, in cryptozoology, we are going to run across hoaxes. The problem is when we don't accept that, and when we don't want to accept that, and when instead we decide the hoax is our best bet, and we try to move forward with something that cannot move forward. Because that doesn't just keep the effort from moving forward, from the scientific inquiry from moving forward, it keeps the field itself from moving forward. So be skeptical, because that's the only way that any of this is going to be solved. That being said, until next time.